I'm Ashton from EventChain for Investment Pitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Alex McDougall, the Chief Investment Officer of Bicameral Ventures. Alex, thanks so much for coming. It's great to see you again, and it's great to have you on the show again as well.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Happy to be here. Really enjoyed the interview last time. Great running into you in Vegas as well, and good to be back.
Likewise, and there's lots of new updates that you have from Bicameral Ventures and your investments in the Aion network. I know you just wrote a few interesting blogs, which got on some decent publications, which I read. I'm interested in diving into a little bit about the Aion network's OAN, Open Application Network, I believe it is. Could you talk about the problem at hand and how this OAN is now solving the sovereignty of people's data?
Sure, and I think it's even a little bit bigger and broader than the sovereignty of data, but data sovereignty is obviously something that we're very passionate about, and something that's a major hot button issue for a lot of people right now, a lot of media outlets right now, and a lot of platforms right now. I mean, the big thesis of the Open Application Network is that generally everything that we do right now is run by some sort of platform, whether it's Facebook or Google or Amazon or even cities, voting parameters, voting platforms. Everything that we're doing is essentially governed by some sort of set of rules and some sort of set of platforms. And as we've gotten farther and farther into the digital age, we've started to see a certain set of problems arise around a lot of the closed loop platforms that we see and that we deal with today. A lot of which has to do with different incentive systems for different stakeholders within those platforms, whether it's the ownership of the platform, usually the equity holders of the platform, who are incented on a tangible nature, often with shareholders and short-term earnings reports, or the users of the platforms who are incented by getting likes and clicks and getting more intangible value out of it. But we really see a big bifurcation in what people are trying to get out of platforms. And we've started to see a lot of problems arise in how platforms are being monetized, mediated, which really, we've never been more mediated in our entire lives as a species than we are today. So where I think the Open Application Network is looking to move towards is this idea of open transparency, all types of value share between the various stakeholders and the various stakeholder groups within a network, and essentially turn it into a real marketplace of ideas, a marketplace of participation, a complete value share, so everybody sees the full value chain of a platform. And a way to actually compete based on merits rather than based on locking in, which is how a lot of our platforms work today. So there's a lot of technology angles to it. There's a lot of mindset angles to it. There's a lot of consumer behavior angles to it. But overall, the Open Application Network is an attempt to leverage a blockchain platform and create a new narrative about what we're actually trying to do with this technology that's not just decentralization, Web3, new internet, different types of consensus, the sort of words that we use today. It's an attempt to really bring it into the mainstream of here's a value proposition that's visceral to what people are actually using technology for.
Oh, well, that's super interesting. And you're right that the topic of this data topic has been, I feel in the last 2 years, has been more important than ever, as everybody seems to be glued to, these top 5 or so social media and websites that see more data than anybody else in the whole world. And it's a matter of who's owning that data, who can use that data to provide value for others. But at the same time, understanding that when people have personal information, it should sort of be theirs and theirs to use or to monetize. And we're seeing this paradigm shift as these open networks come about. And why do you think is there any incentive for these really big companies that are already profiting off other people's data to jump onto this train?
Yeah, and so there definitely is, but I think it's going to come actually in the form of the number 4 and 5 and 6 platforms in an area using this as a way to compete and using this as a way to take down incumbents or a way to challenge incumbents. Unfortunately, I'm probably cynical on this, but I have very little faith in the incumbents to really make meaningful change. And a lot of that's just driven by the short-term quarterly earnings cycle. There's a shareholder value maximization mandate that all of these companies have, and this I'm very happy to talk about why open applications, I think, are going to be exponentially more valuable in the long run. But in the short run, you're absolutely right. You're essentially breaking down your moat. You're opening yourself up to competition, and you're sharing more real tangible value that could accrue back to your shareholders with your actual users. Now, in the long run, I think those are going to be the types of platforms that end up gaining those mass network effects, because for that exact reason, that your users are both getting the intangible value of a platform, of the likes and the shares and all of that, plus some kind of actual value reward. And you mentioned before about the data self-sovereignty side, and I think that's a super key part of it, and probably one of the most tangible outcomes of what we can try and do with open applications and with open platforms. I think some of the data self-sovereignty narrative is, I never want to say overly focused on privacy, but I think some people think that we'd be better off in a world where everybody just had and hold and controlled their own data. But really, we thrive on connectivity, and we thrive on tailored experiences, and we thrive on customization. That's one of the main things that we've learned over this connective evolution of the internet. So it's really finding that balance between sharing, collaborating, privacy, and ways that you can generate the flow and this economy itself without just blindly going through your platform and just having all of your data just explode into the atmosphere where other people can work on it. So it is a longer term game to be willing to play this open application side. You really need to be confident in your tech and confident in your platform to be able and willing to do it. But it's something that will the people who are willing to do it, and the people who actually make this transition are going to be the winners in this long run, I think.
Looks like you're flipped sideways there, Alex.
Oops, apologies. There.
Perfect. So, when you mentioned the top 4, 5, and 6 platforms, what comes to mind for myself is a blockchain-based platform that's actually gaining a lot of traction is the Brave browser. They seem to be quite focused on sovereignty. I read that they recently surpassed 40 million users, or so 40 million downloads, which is pretty big for the blockchain space. But another thing, I've been an advocate of these kind of open networks and having more control for yourself. But a lot of people just don't seem to care, or like it takes a lot of extra effort. If it takes an extra step, it seems that, the fact that all of these services are free and it's convenient, like you're giving up your convenience so that people can use your data. What's it going to take for people to change their minds on that and actually, what if it takes an extra step to become sovereign? Right?
You're speaking my language, my friend. That's exactly one of the biggest problems with blockchain today, is that the user interface is clunky and terrible, quite frankly. You're going to get the bleeding edge or the leading edge of consumers who are really focused or really care or really are valuing privacy. But in order to actually solve the problems that we at Bicameral are trying to solve, you need 1 billion people on this technology, 2 billion, 3 billion people. And with that, you're going to not be able to get them by saying like, oh, it's decentralized, or oh, you can have your data, or any of that stuff. You're going to need to provide them with viscerally better value options that they understand. And so, I mean, the easiest and simplest way is, what if Facebook gave you 10% of the data revenues that they're earning, and that flowed back to you in Facebook credits or in Libra coins, or in however that value share actually works. And what if at the same time you have an extra tab in your Facebook that just shows your data profile? Here's all the things that we think you like. Here's all the people who are trying to connect with you. Here's all the offers that you can directly get. If you buy something through this, we take a cut of it. Just make it a immersive value proposition where we're actually in the flow of data, but with the UX that's built on top of it that just makes it fun. It can make it gamified, but most importantly is that real value comes back to you out of it. So we're working with a project out of Miami that I think I spoke about last time on this show. That's one of the pioneers of the Open Application Network, something called Velocia, that's actually doing a launch with the mayor of Miami tomorrow. And one of the things that's really cool about the way they're treating data is they're a platform that allows you to connect your Uber, your Lyft, your Bolt scooter, your Miami Metro, your Apple Health, and all the different ways you get around a city, and helps you sort of build this 360-degree mobility profile view of yourself. and turns it into, well, with all these things you've done, you've taken 3 tons of carbon out of the air. You've taken 6 cars off the road. Your community and all the people around you in aggregate have done all of these things. So it helps you sort of in a tangible way of getting rewarded for doing certain mobility behaviors that people can incentivize, but also gamifies it. And you see goals and you see things that you're working towards, and really helps you understand your data profile. And then that's what you can actually go out to the data market and say, great, if there's an insurance company that wants to market to me, or if there's an OEM that wants to buy this entire package of data to understand better an autonomous vehicle, that how to get around the city. Those are the types of data that's extremely valuable, but you need to help consumers realize that value, help incent them to do what makes their profile more valuable, and then definitely share that value back with them in a way that's easy for them to use and tangible to them.
Mm-hmm. That's great that Aion is focused on transportation. I know in terms of data points and understanding information about people, the transportation industry is like probably the number one in terms of quantity of data. So that's really interesting that you're doing that with Velocia. And Uber and Lyft have gotten to be such big companies so quickly. I know it seems much faster than these social media companies, that they've just sort of come from nowhere to have so much data. Is this something that these companies could jump onto the open network and utilize that, or is it that Velocia is acting as a competitor to them and they shouldn't jump on it? How does that work with these huge transportation companies that are already giant?
Yeah, and so great point, and I think it's again putting it in terms of what value that they can generate within the context that they understand already. And so, I mean, when specifically you're thinking about Uber or Lyft, in general, it's probably not in their best short-term interest to open up their API and open up their data flows and open up their platform. But when you can put it in terms of, hey, here's 1 million users that we have an extremely high quality of data for, you can see where they're all going, where they're getting off subways, where they're getting off scooters, and where to better position your cars. And you can market and via a smart contract directly incentivize those users to use your service at the highest leverage point and their highest willingness to pay. That has a ton of value to those types of platforms. Right now, they obviously have analytics, but they don't have an inside sight on how the Miami Metro system is working. Mm-hmm. They don't have an inside sight over where all the scooters are going and how people are walking. They partner for some of that data, but there's no direct way to connect and access those different types of users. With a platform like Velocia that's very open and has a wide variety of different mobility service providers on it, and can have any different mobility service provider join it because of how it's open, you get this much richer, more contextual type of clients that you can directly market to and provably add to your platform if you want to. You can market with smart contracts that pay somebody tokens for downloading and registering your Uber app or your Lyft app or whichever app that actually adds to this platform. So it's sort of a combination of, if you look at it as, well, we used to pay $3 for a consumer, and then on this platform we can pay $1 for a better consumer. All of the other ethereal, intangible, great, warm, fuzzy hug feelings aside, this is great for their bottom line because it's getting them better things that churn through their regular platform. And I think that's how concept is going to eat the world, is slowly tuning to people's existing value propositions and then just eating away at the walls and the gardens that really sort of hold people within a certain framework in the short term.
Mm-hmm. And with networks like the Open Application Network and the Aion Network, it must be easy or to get these companies to just use an API or not really have too much hardcore development and have a huge border of integration, so they can actually jump on these things. That seems to be in the blockchain industry so far. Like Ethereum and Neo seem to have very developer friendly platforms to allow applications to be built so that people can actually use them. Is that something that Aion and the Open Network have focused on as well?
Yeah, and so even before the Open Application Network, and I'd say, I mean, Ethereum has done fantastic work. They've built a lot of the tools first, especially Consensus has done good work in building a lot of the developer-friendly tools. But all of those platforms and I mean even Aion to a certain extent before this transition are really competing for a very small piece of the developer pie. It's existing people who know blockchain. There's almost no outreach to existing traditional developers, and especially not where I think is absolutely critical, vertical focused developers. I mean, if you want to build a mobility or a smart city app, you're not going to be a blockchain first person who builds that. You need to build that bridge to somebody who's a great smart city app developer and give them the tools to be able to leverage the best parts of blockchain to create an even better smart city app that you can't build on regular technology. So I think Aion sort of started this transition before when they moved into a Java-based virtual machine. So you could actually have developers who have been coding in Java for years and years and years, one of the most common languages in the world, to be able to plug in directly. And they've taken it even a step further with OAN, developing APIs, developing a bunch of software development kits, developing these kind of open economy immediate tool sets that are like 7-click deploy, and you can have a token, you can have your app, you can have your economy set up, and you can start actually building these tools very, very, very simply. And even more importantly, you can start plugging them into existing networks using what is available on the outside of closed networks or at the user level, and start building little tools that pull a driver's reputation out of Uber and allow them to use it on Lyft and things like that, that just start opening all of these ecosystems up. And again, it's starting at zero and evolving towards this 100% magical, decentralized future that we all sort of look towards.
That's super exciting, Alex. We're running out of time, but if there are people that are interested in learning more or trying to get involved, what is the best way for them to reach out and to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow us on Twitter at Bicameral Ven. You can also learn more about the Open Application Network at theoan.com, I believe, or just Google Open Application Network. There's some really, really good intro blog posts that have laid down a lot of these platform problems, where the gaps are, how this stuff is being solved, and dig into the GitHub, dig into the repos, get a look at these APIs, get a look at these little modules. They're super cool. They're a much different take on blockchain. They're designed to be used and interacted with by people who are vertical developers and not necessarily deep into the blockchain space. And I think it's relatively common knowledge, or relatively well accepted, that blockchain is going to be a huge portion of the future. But we need to start from zero, and we need to start onboarding people, and to solve a bunch of the problems that we want. As I said, it needs to be 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion people. So it starts here, but it ends everywhere, Ashton.
That's great, Alex. Well, thank you so much for the time. It was great to see you again. And I'm looking forward to following up in the near future as the OAN grows.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.